What's up guys, ProJody here, back with the channel. Apologies for quite a big hiatus there. A lot has went on, moving house, moving job, all sorts of things like that, but we are back and draft season is upon us. We are back with a new franchise, back with the DLC for season 4, and I'm really looking forward to it. So as you can tell from above, this is actually a little bit different. It's a tag team draft, so we are in teams for this. So I have teamed up with a couple of good friends of mine, Joe and Brooke, both of which are coaches experienced in the DLC, so they kind of know what they let themselves in for. And we've come together to form the franchise of the Kalos Kings. And what I'm going to do today is just give us a quick breakdown of the team we've drafted. I was going to kind of hope to get at least one of them on to talk things through with me, but everything is a bit crazy at the minute because we've got Mother's Day today and everything like that. So I'm just kind of flying solo on this one. Hopefully in future weeks, especially if it's games that they've played themselves, because we're all going to take a shift playing games over the season, that they will be able to join me on the call and kind of run through things for the teams they've brought, decisions they made, things like that. And we can talk through those on a week by week basis. So without further ado, give you a quick breakdown of how the draft has worked. So it's a standard sort of DLC format. So all the mons are split. We're playing Nat Dex Gen 8. So we got the Mega Evolutions in there, and then everything else is split into 5 tiers. So you will get 1 free Mega Pick, plus then a Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 4 and Tier 5, and 2 from Tier 3. You then have 400 remaining points left to purchase further Tiers 1 to 5. Megas themselves are actually split, so if you take a lower tiered Mega, you will actually then be able to increase that points number of 400. I think the highest you can get it is 480, and that's by taking some of the real bottom end ones, which I think are like Mega Camera up to Mega Ordino, and stuff like that. So we ended up going through and we prepped expecting to be sort of middle of the pack, back end, but we ended up in seat number 1. So we kind of just like, we all just turned around, looked at each other and went, well, we know what we're taking. So we went with the pick 1, Mega Lopunny, arguably the strongest Mega in the Nat Dex format, especially in draft format. For those who haven't used it or seen it before, it is very beasty. 135 base speed and a 136 base attack with the ability Scrappy. So therefore it doesn't even have to worry about the ghost types that it runs into. It does get the fake out as well to help it get that free Mega Evolution up, plus return a couple of good coverage moves with high jump kick, and gets access to all of the elemental punches. So it does hit like an absolute truck. And with that speed, it's very hard to counter. You have to plan for it. If you don't have a way to check it, if you don't have a way to remove it, then that thing will literally just come in 4-5-0 you straight on its own and just walk over your team. So it is something that 100% everyone will have to prep for. And we never expected to come this high up. This is the first time I've ever managed to get Mega Lopunny. I think the last DLC season, when I was with the Brooksish, we ended up in seat 3, and actually Mega Lopunny was available on the 3rd or 4th pick. And I was like, do I take this? And I planned, because I was in seat 3, I'm like, okay, one of the first 2 guys is going to snap this up. And so I never planned for it. And it was available, and I was like, do I take it, do I not? And I was like, no, I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm not going to just drop everything and rework my entire team on the fly. So I stuck with my guns at that time, and I took Deontay, and we did really well. But this season we've got that Lopunny, and fingers crossed that it'll come in clutch for us, and it might actually alone pick us up a couple of W's. So moving on to our second pick, because of that there was then the 16 teams in the draft, so there was then 30 more picks, but then we get the double pick when it comes back to us. So after that we had quite an interesting pick there. There was a few raised eyebrows, because I know playing on ladder, on Showdown, and even on Switch and stuff back in the day, or it was DS back then I think with Megas, there was a few raised eyebrows because the main check to playing against Mega Lopunny is this guy, Tapu Lele. And that's what we picked up to pick 2. We picked up the hardest check for Mega Lopunny and try and make them work together. I mean, it is very strong, man. The reason it is such a good check is Mega Lopunny really struggles to get over it, and also with the Psychic Surge does kind of negate its fake out options and things as well. Psychic Surge, you will see as we go through this roster, I've identified it as potentially is going to be a bit of an issue. Tapu Lele may not be sticking around the full season. I've discussed this with Joe and Brooke a little bit, and we're kind of mulling things over at the minute and just see what happens. So that slot may end up getting changed to something else in a few weeks. We don't know yet. But I mean, at the minute, looking at it, it's a base 95 speed, not the worst. It's still up there, about that average 90 to 100 speed that you kind of want. 130 special attack, 115 special def, so it does give us a very nice special defensive wall that can hit back. It has clerical abilities because it does get access to aromatherapy, and it does have a couple of pretty strong coverage moves there with Energy Ball and Thunderbolt, as well as just being able to smash you really hard with that Moonblast, Psychic, or even Psyshock options there. It even gets access to Calm Mind and Sub, so there is the sort of going down the more setup-y route as well with Tapu Lele. So there's so many different options there as well, which is kind of why we're reluctant to let it go. The whole reason this was picked was because, as I said earlier, we were expected to be middle of the pack. So the Mega we'd actually originally prepped for was Mega Gardevoir. And so when we were looking, we were like, well, Tapu Lele can do a lot of the things Mega Gardevoir could do. So we kind of looked and we discussed it, and then we went, right, okay, we're going to go for the tier 1 pick, and then try and keep things as close as what we did have for the original plan with Gardevoir, just kind of shuffling picks and choices around a little bit, so that way we could try and make things work and keep to our original plan of what we wanted, which I'll get into in a couple of picks time, so there's no spoilers. But as I said, because we're on the wheel pick, we picked up Tapu Lele, and we also then got another pick straight away. And so pick number 3, which was on the original plan, we got to pick 3 before we actually managed to get something that was on our original plan, was Hydreigon. So we spent some points straight away on that third pick, 180 points into Hydreigon. Now, yes, it has that quad weak to Fairy, but it has so many different options there. It's such a versatile mon with access to things like support roles like Defog and Taunt. It's a viable pivot and U-turn. It also has Roost for reliable recovery. It has an insane number of resistances. I can't remember off the top of my head how many it's got, but then it's also got Levitate, adding into them immunities as well. It's all around just such a good mon. And then on top of that, 125 base special attack. It hits like an absolute truck. So straight away we've got 3 mons there who can just hit like an absolute truck. And also we're 2/3 of the way to a fantasy core there, so we just need our steel type, which you can tell is going to come up pretty soon. And actually it comes with the next pick. So the next pick we had was Aegislash. So Aegislash is insane. Going on to this bulky thing, so Joe kind of reins me in quite a bit, because in terms of the team composition, we've got Brooke, who's very, very good at sort of setup roles and like building that sort of thing to win. Joe, who's a very defensive style player, and then me, who's a very offensive player. So we do kind of complement each other quite well in terms of reining in and team building and all that side of things. And this was something which kind of was on my radar a little bit, but I know Joe was extremely happy with it, because out of the 18 types in the game, it resists or is immune to 12 of them, which is an insane number. So it was definitely something that is very tough to get over, especially with that stance change, throwing them 140 defensive stats on that, as well as straight after a protect, is really, really tough. There's also then options, because of how bulky it can be, is you can throw the weakness policy on there to eat that hit, stance change, and then all of a sudden this thing is tearing holes. You don't care about its lower speed because it has access to priority, and stab priority at that. It's such a really, really strong mon, and so many different options you can look at with it as well. Really, really happy to have that on the team. And again, we have the double picks coming in, so that was kind of paired up with another Mon, which we then spent another good chunk of points on, which was Rotom Wash, a Mon that doesn't really need too much introduction. Used it before. Everyone knows in Draft League that the Rotoms, Wash and Heat, are just insanely good and incredible value. So it's such a bulky Mon. Both its defensive stats are about 107. Plus with the Levitate there, removing that main electric weakness is so good. It's more important on Rotom Heat than it is on Rotom Wash, but it's still such a nice thing to have and be able to have that Levitate. Again, that's something that Hydreigon does have as well, so it does give us a few options there, and we're kind of eating away at that ground weakness that Aegislash does have there, so it just kind of helps on that front. But Rotom itself, it's such a good support Mon. Has access to Defog, Will-O-Wisp, it can Pain Split, it can pivot with the Volt Switch. Rotom Wash has the access to the Hydro Pump. There's also then splash moves that you can throw in, like the Dark Pulse is such a good thing. So again, there's so many different options that we can bring with Rotom. And its attacks, its speed stats 86, it's not the best, it's not the worst. But I think it's got a 105 special attack, so it is something that definitely is something that has to be kind of taken into consideration when prepping of how you are going to handle that thing. So that's kind of like our main offensive threats out of the way. We've touched a little bit on the support with Rotom there, and as we're coming back up, we're like, okay, we need to kind of look at more of our utility, our setup, support roles a lot more. And it came back up, and we jumped down into tier 4 for our next pick. Something which I've used quite a lot. It is one of my go-to Mons, and that is Gligar. Now, this thing, straight off the bat, it's a 105 base defense, plus it's an Eviolite holder, which just throws that up so huge. Also makes its special defensive stat pretty respectable, and I think that brings it up with the 50% boost. It makes it the equivalent of about a base 100, 100 to 105. So it's in that area. So it's such a viable Mon. Ground flying is quite a nice typing as well. And in terms of the support things it can do, we can bring it as a defogger or we can bring it as a rock setter. It has both of those options there. There's also then the other support options of things it can do, such as it can toxic, it can U-turn, it can knock off. It has so many viable different options there that it's such a useful utility to have. It's the Pokemon equivalent of the Batman belt in draft, I think is the best way to describe it. It can do so much stuff for you that is 100% definitely worth the tier 4 pick there in my opinion. And I think it's one of the best picks we managed to pick up in there in the draft list. We did, obviously, in the wheel pick, we then get another pick in with that, and this was a Mon that I kind of had to take on the fly a little bit because we had a list of about 4 Mons for this slot, and all 4 of them got taken on the way back up. And because of the way the timer worked, so we had about a 2 to 3 hour window. I think it was 2 hour window, and at the time of night it was it was in time difference. I'm in the UK, Joe and Brooke are in the US. They're both fast asleep, I'm wide awake, and we, out of all the picks that we had listed ready to go, there was only Gligar available. So I had to pick something up on the fly, and I ended up scooping up Linoon. I just went with something I know I'm comfortable with, and I know it can do stuff. It is very much a one-trick pony in the sense of the main way you can really use it is that belly drum set, with the gluttony, dropping in something like Figgy Berry. However, the big thing for me is that stab extreme speed. Even without the belly drum boost, that is something to really take into consideration, is having that extra level of priority is so good. It does actually get some reasonable coverage moves as well, with Speed Bomb, Shadow Claw, Stomping Tantrum. So it does have some good coverage options there as well. And to round it off as well, it's a 100 base speed, so it's actually it's not a bad speed tiering either. It can speed creep quite a few things, so definitely something that is worth considering. So even without that extreme speed option there, it can definitely come in and hit some people like a truck. again, this is possibly because of the circumstance of how I picked it up. I'm perfectly happy with it. Joe and Brooke are happy with it, but it's something that if it looks like it ain't going to be brought, and we may actually end up looking and seeing if there is anything else there that we could include in the roster that may come in. So that's kind of the other one. Watch this space. That could be going. We could be making a mid-season trade on that. So the next round of picks which came in were quite interesting. This is 100%. This pick I have to give. I cannot take any credit at all on this pick. This pick is 100% Joe. There's two picks that he did this with where it turned into a bit of a dictatorship with no complaints, because he just went, this is what we need, let's go with it. And we kind of looked at it and we went, why haven't we considered this man? And it's our first tier 3 pick, and that is Shaman. So it is Shaman land form. Shaman sky form isn't allowed in the format, so this is only the land form. But oh my days, 100 stats across the board. It has, like, I was looking at it and I was working out how to discuss it on the video, and I was like, there's 4 to 5 different sets I could talk about. There's support sets with the likes of Leech Seed in there. There's offensive scarfed sets. There was like wall breaking sets using like Seed Flare. There's full clerical sets. I was like, this man, we can literally just go, okay, we need something to do this role. Let's go. It's kind of like, it's obviously not up there, but it is on par with like a grass type Mew in terms of how diverse it is. And I know there's going to be some people slate me for saying that, but I actually would rather take Shaman than Mew, only because it's a lower tier, but it can do so much of the equivalent that Mew can, and it's so versatile. I think it is such a good pick, but I can't take any credit for that. That was Joe, and 100% amazing steal there, to be able to pick that up, and especially so late in the draft as well, because by this point as well, there's people who've pretty much padded out everything, and all they're going for now is tier 4s and 5s. With the exception of one guy, hats off to Rory, who absolutely just confused everybody and filled up the entire lower end of his first. But it did work quite well to his advantage. But yeah, I mean, I was very surprised that this was still around at this point in the draft, and so it was just a snap, let's take it. That was kind of similar to our other pick as well that we picked up with it, because we did fill up our other tier 3 slot with Lycanroc Dusk form. We were debating, we wanted one of the Lycanrocs, we knew that. Mainly because we wanted a Stealth Rock setter that could do some other little bits as well. And when we were looking at it, it was a tie between, it ended up coming down to between Midday form and Dusk form. And we went with the Dusk form just because it's the slightly more beneficial stats for what we were looking for. It has the Tough Claws ability, which is really, really strong. Has the Accel Rock as well, giving it that extra bit of priority. Again, bringing back to the whole thing with Tapu Lele, like, straight off the bat, we've got 4 mons in here who kind of would like to use priority, but yeah, we've got a Psychic Surge. So again, that's more bringing into why we are considering, is Tapu Lele the right fit? So we'll just see what happens there. But back to Lycanroc and its coverage moves. It's got Zen Headbutt, Fire and Thunder Fan, Iron Head, Sucker Punch, Brick Break. It's got so much nice coverage, which when coupled with 117 base attack, plus the 110 speed, plus Tough Claws, that can all of a sudden run away quite quickly with people. And to scoop something up at that level of power in tier 3 is so nice. Because again, it's something that can hit really, really hard, and because we have actually, up until that point, we only really have Mega Lopunny and Aegislash that we can kind of turn to for consistent physical damage outputs. It was really nice to have Lycanroc to back that up as well, because obviously Hydreigon, Tapu Lele and Rotom are all very, like, they hit hard, but they all hit specially hard, not physically, so it kind of gave us that nice balance where we've got kind of 3 of each now. So moving into the last 2 picks, now this was a kind of flip situation of what happened with the tier 4 pick for Linoon. I was asleep, Brooke was busy, and so there was only Joe kind of available at this point, and he had to take 2 mons on the fly. And I'm quite happy with the ones that we got picked up here. Both kind of fit in, fill nice little roles in the team. So the first one he scooped up was a Rapidash. Any mon that has some sort of immunity in there, with this thing having the flash fire, whether it comes from an ability or that, is always super nice to have and super useful because it can potentially give you the free switch-ins. So flash fire coupled with a 105 base speed, I was quite surprised with how fast this is. It's one of these mons that you know it's up there, but then when you realise that it's breaking that 100 speed tier, you're like, oh, okay, this is something that can do something. I think it's got 100 base attack as well. It's up there as well. So again, it's similar to Lycanroc in the way of it's a hard hitting physical. It is a little bit fragile, but having said that, with a 105 speed, if you put it in a position, you could throw a Choice Scarf on that and just let it run wild for a while. No pun intended. But in terms of coverage moves as well, it's actually got pretty solid covering. Like, I knew about the Wild Charge and I knew about High Horsepower, but then when flicking through what it actually had, I also found it has access to Mega Horn, Poison Jab and Throat Chop, which all three can then kind of broaden that out and give it a few extra options as well, particularly for as kind of a potential hard counter or a revenge killer against someone's main threats in the team that you're struggling to deal with. So definitely something that I'm quite happy that we scooped up, especially for a tier 5 pick, because my main philosophy is like, you shouldn't just go, okay, well, I've got these really good 6-7 mons from the higher tiers, I'll just take like memes, I'll take whatever, or this is a different type. You should only take the tiers in the lower tiers if you're actually viably going to use it. Otherwise you're kind of wasting picks, and you're wasting resources, and especially in a draft, like when you've got 10-11 games potentially, that's something you can't really afford to do, because otherwise you become too predictable towards the end of the season, and that's when you can start to get the losses. If you're here and you by week 4 or 5 and you've used every single mon on your roster, everyone's suddenly sitting there going, okay, I have to prep for a full 11, not just 7 or 8, and that makes that so much harder. So I'm really happy to get stuff like Rapidash, which we can actually potentially use. I've already eyed it up for 1 or 2 of the matches actually already in the first half of the season, so I think it's definitely something that will be brought. And speaking of mons that will definitely be brought, this is a mon which we were looking at, and the moment we started looking at prep, this was actually after Mega Lopunny, one of the first mons on the roster on week 1, which quite surprised me, but it's because it actually did such a nice role in the matchup, and that is Spiritomb. So Spiritomb, surprisingly bulky, has the Infiltrator ability. It only has 1 weakness in Fairy, which is super nice, and as a Ghost Dark type, it does everything it says on the tin. You know it's going to throw out shenanigans at you. It's Pursuit Trapper, it's got Sucker Punch, it's got Will-O-Wisp, it's a Foul Play, it's got Trick, it's got Toxic, it's got Snarl. It just does so much stuff and has so many different utility things that it can just do to mess with people, and that's exactly what you expect with a Ghost Dark type. And it can just do so much, run so much interference, but even then, access to things like Foul Play, Sucker Punch and Pursuit, as well as the Snarl, it can still deal out a reasonable amount of damage there as well. It's not the fastest, so you do kind of potentially rely quite a bit on that Sucker Punch priority, but yeah, it is a pretty solid mon. And I'm very happy with how that is then rounded out, and again, that was another amazing pick by Joe there in the end of the draft. So that is our team coming into the season 4 of the DLC. I'm extremely happy with it. Joe has actually just played week 1, so we're going to be trying to organise, get that coverage and run through that week 1 result. I haven't looked at how it's went. I know how the outcome has came, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than we expected. A lot closer than we expected. The other video as well is I have actually been working with Stephen, who is one of the coaches of the admins team. So the three admins for the league have teamed up, and Stephen, aka the Poketechnician, very kindly invited me over onto his channel last night, and we ran through and we did a breakdown in a tier list of all of the teams with the completed rosters in the DLC Season 4. So I'll tag the link for that in the description below so you can go and check that out. It is really interesting to see how the different teams and the different thought processes have been made. And you can also see how we fare up against the other teams as well. So, thank you for obviously looking along. Drop a comment if there's anything in there that you think I've missed, or anything that you think is worth highlighting with this team, and also if there's anything that you think potentially could be worth looking at, of any holes in the team as well. I'm always open for constructive criticism. Don't just sit there and go, oh, don't take that, it's terrible. Give us constructive criticism if you want to put something like that in there. I'm always happy to read through that, especially if you've got any suggestions for potentials for removing of Tapu Lele and Linoon there. And if there's anything you think that we may look to consider role-wise for bringing those in. But thank you so much for tuning in again, guys, and hopefully I'll see you again in the future for week 1. Ciao.